Thanks everyone for joining this quarter's product update webinar. I'm George Valdez, and I'm going to introduce here our co-founder CEO, Robert. Just a little bit of housekeeping. At the very end, we'll have Q&A. We'll be responding to questions that get asked throughout the show. So just feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A box below. We will be answering them also, responding to them in text if it makes sense, and any other questions that make sense for either Alex or Robert to go over, we'll be sure to address that. Any questions we cannot get to at the end, we will follow up with you via email. Also, just to note, we will be recording this, so after this, we will be sending an email with a follow-up link to be able to view the webinar. And with that, Robert, take it away.
Thanks, George. Let me see if I can go ahead and share my screen and get started. Sorry, went a little bit too fast. Welcome everyone to our second Monograph product webinar. Thank you, George, for doing some housekeeping stuff. Quick reminders. We will be recording, and we'll be sending that recording shortly afterwards if we do have to step out halfway through the webinar. For anyone who's attending who's not a Monograph user, I want to take a few minutes and kick off the webinar to tell you a little bit about who I am, the team behind the scenes, and what our mission is. I'm Robert, a co-founder and CEO at Monograph. Simply put, we are a team of trained architects, software developers, and software designers. Collectively, we have MArchs from Michigan, MIT, Columbia, and Harvard. We've worked at large firms like SOM and Softy Architects, and small firms like Kubernetes. Needless to say, we've ran into our fair share of nightmares around time tracking and project management. We live, work, and inhabit buildings. Like, the responsibility of an architect is enormous. For decades, architects have used nothing more than spreadsheets to manage and coordinate how buildings come to be. This is why creating a better built environment by enabling architects and professionals to work together seamlessly is so important today. To achieve our goal, we need to start with the fundamentals: time, projects, budgets, and people. Monograph, a simple firm management tool. A tool that strives to understand that projects are made up of multiple phases, a tool that allows you to wear multiple hats, real-time visibility to staying on budget, and now plan a project like never before. A simple firm management tool. To accomplish this, we stand on 3 pillars today to lead our vision. Being a design-first company, simplicity is extraordinarily important. We spend a lot of time focus on how design systems influence the way we solve for firm management. Famously quoted by Mies van der Rohe, less is more and God is in the details. We all know that successful project management thrives from great communication. As architects, we communicate visually. Core to Monograph, we drive visibility and transparency from representation. Lastly, architecture is a service-based business, and our job is to ensure that you make revenue decisions. You always have the data and accurate data that's backed with comprehensive data. And now, to walk you through our most recent features to help you better understand your time and data, there's no better person I can think of than Alex Dixon, my partner, co-founder, and head of product at Monograph, the architect behind what really makes Monograph special. Alex, I'll let you take it away.
All right, thank you, Robert. Let me get my screen going here. There we go. All right, I promise I am the same human that you're seeing in the screen, just a little more up top, you know? All right, so got a bunch of things going on. I head the product over at Monograph, so I spent a lot of time thinking and designing all the different features, and got a bunch of really exciting ones that we just launched, and I want to take you through a couple of those and give you a couple scenarios. So today we're going to cover the project planner, which is our probably largest feature we've most recently released. Rebuilding the whole kind of project creation, scheduling, budgeting experience, going to take you through that. Project status, which we talked about in our last webinar, but wasn't actually launched. We're going to briefly cover statuses and how to use those. And then a couple of other cool things we launched regarding timesheets, invoices, and a few reminders on other things you can do in the platform if you haven't discovered them or might have forgotten them. So let's get right to it. All right, project planner. If you have been in the product before, you'll remember our project builder kind of had 4 or 5 tabs. We've consolidated those all into one single page to hopefully make it a lot easier to manage all the information when you're building a project and actually give you a lot more power when you're deciding to create a project from top down or bottom up. And I'm going to take you through 2 different scenarios today. One where we're going to create a project from top down, the kind of classic approach that we had in the platform from before. And then a version where you actually build a project from the bottom up, starting with the roles and phases, and then actually going up to the budget as the final step. So to kick it off, we're gonna create a new project. So this will be our top-down project. And lands you on the same screen. None of this has changed. This is all the same, but you'll notice up here, we only have 1 tab as opposed to the 4 tabs that we previously had. So clicking on that gets us to this screen. And now this is kind of where we have the 2 options. So you can start with a budget, which is the top-down approach, or you can start with a phase, which is the bottom-up. We're going to do the top-down first. So we're going to start with a budget. Clicking the button here opens up our budget calculator. Now, a couple of options in here. We're going to start off by saying, okay, we have an idea of a total fee. It's $100,000. Keep it nice and easy. Other consultants in this project? Yeah, sure, there's some consultants. Let's say we want to allocate $25,000 to the consultants, right? So total fee minus consultants now gives us our project fee. The project fee is either directly going to become the project budget, or if you want to include an extra profit on there, either in a fixed dollar amount or as a percent, you can do so as well. So let's take another 5,000 just in case. Let's go ahead and lock these. Now, locking is kind of a new mechanism we've introduced, and this prohibits the kind of errors of money flowing up if you don't want it to. So in this case, since we're going top down, we're going to lock our total fee, and we're going to lock our project budget. Everything looks good. Click update, and it takes us back to this main screen. Now you'll notice we have our total fee up here, which you can click on if you want to edit again. We have our project budget, which is locked, and now we have a remaining budget over here of $70,000, which we have yet to allocate because we have no phases. So let's go ahead and create a phase. We'll do a pretty basic project here. So we'll do a schematic design phase first. You'll see this is all same as before. You have your dates, you have your linked phase, fee type, and you can either include a fixed dollar amount for the budget, or you can do a percent. For this run through, let's do a percent. So let's put 15% there. You'll see this updates. We actually have allocated now 15% or $10,500, and our remaining budget has gone down. Looks good. Let's lock that. Again, locking prevents anything from flowing up. And we're going to go ahead and start adding some roles. Now you'll remember this used to be another tab, and we've again kind of pulled this in. So everything's all on this one page. Let's put in a principal. And let's put in a designer. All right, so like before, you can still edit the hourly fees. So here, let's say we're doing a friend a favor, give them a lower rate. And you can actually assign people now from this page as well. So we're gonna assign Fernando and we're gonna assign Charles. Again, this used to be another page, but bringing them all together, everything's looking great. This section here is brand new. So this one is where you're actually going to allocate that amount of money in either hours, percent, or as a fixed amount. For this one, let's do percent. So let's give 10% to the principal and 90% to the designer. So you'll see this then automatically fills out the hours and the dollars here. Everything's zeroed out to 100%, looking great. Now, let's go ahead and a few more phases. Design development, let's do construction documentation, and administration. All right, so following that same logic, we can come down here. Let's put in 25%. As you can see, we're allocating more. Let's lock that. Construction documentation, let's do 60, so everything's all nice and shiny. And then construction administration, let's go ahead and change this to hourly. So again, like before, you can still do that. And then best practices, put in a max cap here, let's say $10,000. That way, when a Gantt will show up, everything will appear nice on the dashboard. Again, we can go in here, we can start selecting our roles, same hourly rates, let's assign some people to these. And in this case, we can actually do hours. So maybe let's do 20 hours for the project manager and 80 for the designer. But we're not quite to our 100, so maybe let's do 120 hours and 40. Ah, okay, now we're getting somewhere. So as you can see up here, everything's highlighted in red. We've gone over our 100%. So what I recommend in a scenario like this is to use the hours to get a ballpark figure, and then go in here and massage the percentages to actually zero out the total. So we can add 35 and 65, we get 100, everything's looking good. And we can continue on doing the same thing, adding more phases. But for now, let's mark this one as done. Pretty happy with it showing up here. So again, that's the top-down approach. Now let's go through one where we have a bottom-up project. So in this project, we're gonna start with a phase. So we don't have a budget in mind, we just know that we're gonna try to build a similar project. So we know we have schematic design as our first phase. Here, we know that we're gonna have a principal and probably a designer. You know, maybe we're still doing our friend a favor again. Let's go ahead and assign some people here. And you'll notice here, you can't use the percentage in this case. The reason being is because the percentage takes a percent of the budget, but since we don't have a budget, we're unable to take a percentage. So we're gonna default to using the hours here. So let's do 40 and maybe 160. So now these roll up into the budget. Now we actually have a budget. Let's go ahead and lock that. And you'll notice that we also now have a project budget and a project fee, or a total fee, excuse me. Continuing on, let's add a couple more phases. Again, design development, construction documentation. Now we can do the same thing. Let's add a project architect and a project designer. We'll assign them. Now let's see. And again, let's add some time in here. 80 hours, another 160. Now you'll notice that this phase remains intact, it's the same, but our budget now is going up because we've added more roles. They're all flowing up to the top. Let's go ahead and lock that. And then I want to note that in the bottom-up strategy, so this is all good, but let's actually say, okay, now we have a good idea of our project budget. Let's go and edit the total fee. So as you notice, you can click on this little thing here. It'll bring up the budget calculator, and you can go ahead and edit like we did before. So perhaps we have some consultants, put those in there, and you'll notice that this now deducts from our project fee because we didn't lock it. So usually you want to lock those, lock that up. And now if we edit this, it'll actually only deduct from the total fee. So the locks are great for choosing which direction you want the money to flow. Let's go ahead and lock that up. Update. Oh no. Now look, we have over allocated our budget because we changed it in there. So coming back down, we have to go into here and say, oh, okay, maybe this one should be a lot less. Okay, so now we're looking good here, but again, this is notifying us we need to continue and edit here as well. So, we can do something like that. And you can play around with this to your heart's content to figure out the final fee. There's one other thing that we introduced as part of our project planner that I'm also really excited about, highly requested, and I think is gonna be very helpful for all kinds of projects. And that's the ability to add a custom phase. So we have some basic phases here, but let's go ahead and add a custom phase. So what this means is you can add a phase that's not only, it can either be a phase globally available to all of your projects, or it can be only available to this specific project. So we're gonna do that one first. So this will be a special phase. And we'll call it SP, fixed type, So this checkbox here is what you'd want to select if you want it to be global. In this case, we don't, so we're going to leave it unchecked. Let's click Add the Phase. And you'll see it down here has a special indicator. Now this phase is only in here. You can't access it from any other project. If you did want to do that, you could also create a phase and select this box, which would then populate it in your settings panel as well. So 2 options there. The other really nice thing is that in addition, you can now edit the phases themselves. So say we set up schematic design and we're like, ooh, this should be pre-design. Instead of having to delete it and do a whole bunch of hoops, now you can go in here and select from your existing phases. We can select pre-design and update. And even more exciting, you can go in here and you can create a custom phase just for that. And again, make it available globally or keep it local. So a lot of nice kind of bonuses in here as well. So all this looks good. We're going to hit done. And those are the 2 different scenarios to take you through. All right, so did the demo, nailed it. Let's keep going. A couple things to remember. So like we went through before, you can still link your phases. This is available in the previous one. It's available still in this one. And that just means if you have a phase with a certain date range and you link a phase to that, changing the previous phase's date range will also update the linked phase. You can lock your fields. I made a point of doing that a number of times throughout the project planner. It's really important just to maintain the flows of money back and forth. Remember, lock your fields. Again, the project editing page is only available to people with edit permissions. So if you don't have access to this page, ask your admin for access. And the additional profit field, again, is optional. You don't have to use it, but it's there in case you do. All right, project status. So again, we launched this after our last webinar, so I want to take you through briefly and just discuss a few of the abilities of the new project status. So here we have all our projects on the Gantt page. They're all in the active status at the moment. Let's go ahead and click into Palm Springs. Now, the way you set status is by going up here and clicking on active. So let's go click active. We're presented with 5 options. So we have proposed, active, paused, canceled, and completed. Of these 5 options, only active enables your time to track time and add expenses. So the other 4 statuses prevent anybody from adding time or expenses in their timesheet. So this project is currently active. Let's go ahead and move this one to paused. We update it. You can see the visual treatment changes. And if you go back to the project Gantt, you can see the same thing up here. So has a pause status. Let's go down to Natoma. So maybe Natoma, oops, it's not supposed to be active. We actually meant that one to be proposed. Let's put it to proposed. You can see different visual treatment, the dashed line indicator. And again, back on your main dashboard, shows up the same. 2100 Circle Road. So this project's almost finished, but let's say the client decided to pause that last phase. So you've already billed, you've already finished this. Instead of pausing the whole project, what you can also do is in this sidebar area, if you actually click on the phase name, so we'll click on construction documentation, it'll take you to a dedicated phase page. So now this page, you can access the same set of statuses minus proposed. And here we can pause the phase. So let's update. So now we've only paused the construction documentation phase. And to get back to the previous page, we can click on the title here, 2100 Circle Road, and navigate back. You see that this is paused. These are still intact. Everything's good. So those are a couple things around statuses. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A. But to keep things moving, we will now go on to 2 other smaller features, but also hopefully boost your workflows: timesheets and invoices. In the timesheets section, for those who have master permissions, there's now an audit timesheets tab. Clicking in here, you can then access all of the timesheets that are missing some piece of information. So be this phases, roles, or activities. You'll be able to see all those and actually go in and edit them to fix any of those errors. Very helpful because the better data, the better reports that we can generate. The other item is invoice duplication. So this has been requested a number of times and hopefully will speed up a lot of those workflows as well. A duplicate button on the far right of those invoices on the invoices page. So clicking that, create a copy. Pro tip, and this is the part where some of these things you might have forgotten or just never experienced before, but those 3 little dots in the corner, clicking on that reveals 3 options: archive, duplicate, and delete. And this is for projects specifically. Archive will move it out of your main Gantt view into the archive tab, which you can see up here. They can still be accessed. They're still there. They just don't clutter up that main interface. Duplicate, same thing as the invoice. It actually creates a copy of the project and is a great way to quickly create, versions of projects that are similar. And delete, that's pretty self-explanatory. All right, folks. Well, I appreciate you coming over and hanging out. We are asking for anybody with ideas on reporting or reports specifically to send us an email detailing those. That's going to be a big push later this year. So we're collecting all the information we can to really go back through and kind of rebuild our entire reporting system. And if something doesn't come up, you forget to ask it here, you can always talk to us in the chat app as well. And with that said, I want to open it up to Q&A. So if you have questions, fire away.
Thanks, Alex and Robert. Really helpful. Okay, so we do have, let's see here. We do have one question regarding, I think this was an interesting question. Basically, some people are not really sure as to like what's the right approach when it comes to fixed fee or hourly. And, this is definitely like a kind of business question in general. But Robert, might be good to just talk a little bit about like, what have you seen from a perspective of like hourly versus flat fee? When does it make sense to charge hourly versus flat fee? And yeah, I think that would be kind of helpful in relation to the project planner.
Yeah, I think the best way to really think about this is our terminology of fixed and hourly are a little bit different than what you might think from a contractual agreement. The way we use hourly is essentially a new bucket of money, the way to conceive and think about hourly within Monograph, and it's not actually part of the original budgeting of the project. So it's not calculated within that total fee total, it's not calculated within the project fee total. A really good example of when to use hourly in these cases are for CA, when you know that it's a little bit more open-ended and you're not part of the total lump sum. Or another situation could be essentially when you're doing additional services and it's a new add-on scope. So it's a new bucket of money that you want to track against. These would be great scenarios when you use hourly within Monograph and it's not a fixed fee fee type.
Great, thank you. I think Lindsay also had a very similar question to this in terms of CA and hourly and how you could go about doing that. For Alex, when you flag a project as proposed, where would it show up in the summary for the project?
In the summary?
I think that would be in the, and Melissa, let me know if I'm correct in how you're saying this. You can use the chat if you want to explain a little bit further, but yeah, I believe it's in the actual.
Oh, George, I could take a stab at this. I'm reading the question too. When you set projects to propose, they will still show up in your main project index page where all your projects live, and then you will be able to filter within the sorting filter list by status. So I think that's what you mean in terms of summary. I believe also that only master users have the ability to see proposed projects, which means Melissa, only you and whoever else on your organization who's set to master can see proposed projects.
Yep, that's correct.
Great, thank you. Is there a way to change a phase in the planner if you've already assigned roles?
Yeah, totally. You can change a phase if you're talking specifically about what phase you want. So you want to change schematic design to design development or to a custom localized phase at a later point. You can absolutely do that. You can even do it after people have tracked time against that phase. I believe I showed a little bit of that in the demo as well. So the answer would be emphatically yes.
Awesome.
I'm gonna chime in just really quickly. Keep in mind like the repercussions of changing phases when you've already logged time is that we will then also change that historically on all time logged against that phase. So let's say you were tracking time already on schematic design, and then all of a sudden you change it to proposal, different phase, your historical data will change accordingly. I think best practices is once you are set in stone on what the phase is, really not change it anymore because it does affect the historical data.
This is another question regarding the project planner. Let me just kind of digest this in a second. So the project status in relation to hours that have been allocated, do proposed projects, are they added to the team member's workload, or are they only added when the project is active?
Correct. Proposed projects don't impact any of the team's workload until they're moved to an active status. In combination with the project planner, they're designed as a way for you to be able to kind of prototype and build out projects without having to commit to any particular fee or structure, at the outset. And you can kind of refine that as you're working through the contract with the client. And only once you actually move it to active status does the team have the ability to track time and stuff against it, and it shows up in their kind of reports.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so this one has to do with, I'm trying to bucket maybe a couple of them into one. So, well, these are two. So with the planner, can you add a person to all phases at once?
Not yet. But we definitely understand now that we've went through version 1 of the planner, knowing that this will be a great add-on for version 2 as we continue to develop more features for Project Planner.
Thank you. Let's see, when a project is clicked as inactive, will that be for the whole office, or only for individuals associated to that project? So for context, some team members might only be working on one client's projects.
Yeah, I'm going to interpret the inactive as referring to the statuses. And if that's the case, then yes, it's a global status. It applies to the entire office.
This one. Okay, so there is a question. I think we can answer this one separately. There's a question about invoices, though we didn't cover, but I think this might be interesting in relation to the phases that we're talking about. Is it possible to merge the phases when you're invoicing? So if you added a DD, this one's a little bit trickier to answer. If you added basically kind of a DD sub, I'm gonna assume this means like a sub phase. Can you merge it with another phase, or can you merge these phases together within an invoice?
Really good question. I'm reading the question too on the side of my screen here. So generally, the best practice is when you're in the invoice view and that page, it's really important for us to keeping your data really clean is to keep them separate, so that you know exactly where hours are spent in your DD custom phase versus your DD within scope phase. This is also why that when you're creating an invoice, that the invoice side of the panel is completely editable. So at that point, you can merge it, but you would have to consciously make your own decision to merge those fields and combine those totals. From our end, in terms of just making sure that the reports are accurate and the data are clean, it's really important for us to keep it separate.
Great, thanks. We have some more questions here. Let's see. So is there the question here, and I'll try to digest it and maybe answer it the same. Is there somewhere the master admin can see what the team members without admin access see? Can the team see the project budget numbers? Can they see their billable rate? So, Robert, do you want to take this one actually?
Sure. One, everyone, if you're the master of, or if you're the originator of the Monograph account, you have complete access and complete control over how you determine your policies. So you can determine what your staff sees based on your, what fits for your company culture. And generally, if you allow a person or a policy role to edit a project, they see everything. So you have to essentially, if you don't want them to see it, you have to remove their ability to edit the project. Keep in mind that also removes their ability to use the project planner. If they do have the ability, they will see everything in the project planner. That includes their billable rates as well.
Awesome. We have another question that came through the chat about using the project planner in order to create a proposal. What are your thoughts on that, Robert?
Absolutely. I think that's, it was a really good debate internally of like what to call it, right? Like originally one of the tabs was called budget. So our first tab was budget. We really started to lean on planner because like the objective is not only to plan a project that already exists, but really to also facilitate your assistance in planning projects that you have yet won. So in that case, we will be exploring future features around like how do we extend the planner in a way where it's like really exactly appropriate for you to win work. I believe you can already use it today in a way where like start to plan out and allocate time on work that you have yet won.
I think this is also worthwhile to mention that while it is very helpful to help you, the project planner can help you put together the project budget and the schedule. We also allow you the ability to share the Gantt chart as well via clickable link, and that can be paired up with your proposal, right? So if you send out an email to a potential client with the proposal, you can also send them a link so they can have an interactive way of seeing the kind of Gantt chart without, and it doesn't cover any of the financial information necessarily associated with it. It just kind of shows the schedule. And that could be a nice nod to, showing an interactive way of communicating with a client, which is something we're also very much interested in exploring with Monograph customers, is how we can make a better client-facing experience out of this as well. So, great. We also got a question if everything we showed today is live. It is live. So very excited about that. Thanks for that, William. Okay, Diane brings a really good question. So, is it possible to set up a typical project and call it template, and with the phases and roles already commonly used, and then duplicate that to reuse for new projects? And the answer is
yeah, definitely.
That's actually a really, the duplication right now is a really good way for us to get to, we do want to do templates over time. But right now, duplication's like the way that we're addressing that. So you can certainly create your own templates, leave them as duplicates. You could likely go back into a completed project and turn that into a template and then make the modifications to that as well. So you don't have to feel like you have to start, from the beginning and kind of map it all out. You can actually use your historical projects as templates. So
George, just to add on, to duplicate projects, you would need the permission policy set that you can create and edit projects. If that is off, then because you cannot create projects, you would not be able to duplicate projects. So just keep in mind when we're going through some of these features that you have the right policies for the right team members on your team, so they can actually create those projects and duplicate them. It's going to be right under the three little dots when you're looking at the project in the far upper right-hand corner.
Great. Thank you, Wendy, for congratulating me on the new baby. Appreciate that. So there's a couple more questions, I think, and we have one here from Melissa about grouping team members into a bigger team. So the context here is, in a scenario where someone has, like, let's say they have 5 teams that are led by 5 different individual PMs. How could one see the workload of those teams, or is workload right now only at an individual level?
Yeah, I think the best way to start with this, and I think we're gonna, as Monograph continues to grow, we're gonna continue to build features to help you manage larger teams. I think right now, a feature that we've had for a very long time is the feature called Workload. Workload, and you can essentially set workload by people or by project. And with that, you can see across the entire organization all your PMs. And you can filter based on PMs, based on their job title, to really get an accurate sense of how many projects each PM is working on. If you don't know, reach out to me personally. I can kind of walk you through where that workload page is within the app.
Thank you. Seeing here, just going back into. So I think that covers actually all the questions.
Yeah, I think I see one here that I don't think we've covered that I think is a really good one. And it's about, like, what happens when you're trying to incorporate staff that aren't really full-time, and they're kind of like in and out a little bit, which is really common in most practices, I think. And the question was, like, what's the best approach? So here at Monograph, like, our goal is always to try to keep your data as clean as possible, because it allows us to really accurately produce great reports for you and give you really good transparency and visibility into how things are going. With that said, the best practice is to invite them to Monograph when they do come on. And then when their contract is done, if they're on a monthly or weekly contract, to then deactivate them when they're no longer with the practice. At Monograph, we only bill once a month, so we'll auto adjust the amount of fee that's part of your subscription plan based on your seat count. So if you do go up in size this month and then you come back down next month, your fee will be automatically adjusted accordingly.
I'm going to take a stab at that one too, because I think what Robert says definitely can be really useful in certain contexts. I think what that question might also be asking is, for the actual planning of a project, we would always recommend, if possible, to add and budget somebody in if you can. But ultimately, our system lets you track time against the project you're not assigned to. So if you aren't able to do that, you can certainly still have other team members who are dipping in here and there, track their time against that project, which will consume against your total budget. It just won't be, it'll be outside of kind of what you budgeted. So you may end up with it'll depend on how everything shakes out in the end to see where your kind of profitability for that particular phase lands. We do have some features coming down the line that we're hoping that will start to address some of the nuances of how projects are kind of, there's the initial idea of a project and then actually how projects really work in terms of staffing. So keep an eye out for those as we continue to refine and launch those features down the line. I got some backup here.
Okay, I think that covers all the questions then. If no one has any questions, I think we can wrap a little bit earlier.
I think the baby agrees too.
The real boss is here,
Yeah.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for for joining us. Really appreciate it for taking the time to learn more about the project planner. And we're just very excited to keep, delivering value to you. And we really appreciate your feedback as well. So once again, we're looking at reports right now. We want to know all the, I'm actually going to send out a survey later today to everyone. So look out for that. But we really want to understand what are the questions that you ask on a weekly, daily basis that help you make better decisions. And then we will take that information and try to deliver something that meets that need for you. So thanks everyone.
Bye.
Great. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks.